Thank you to Denise Rosier, and thank you to our amazing band as always. So how are we doing today? Happy spring! Welcome to spring. It's officially spring. Doesn't that feel so good? I know I've been enjoying this year. I went to Walmart and bought all these daffodils and tulips and these pots, and for the first time actually have those at our home, and which is exciting to me because I've never had that. So it's fun to go out and see the beautiful daffodils, and crocuses coming up, and just our earth is bountiful, isn't it? It absolutely is. So according to a survey, what do people worry about the most? Money. What makes people the happiest? Money. What makes people the unhappiest? Money. So over the past few weeks, we have been talking about money. And it's good to talk about it. We had a conversation after church last week, and we were talking about how important it is to have these conversations in church. The two things that we don't talk much about church, or we don't talk about money, and we don't talk about sex. Oh my gosh. Two things that are the most normal thing in the world. And so it's important for us to bring these things to the table and to talk about these things and to shift our consciousness from money as a lack thing to money is good, and that it's good to have more than enough flowing in. Wouldn't you all say that feels good to have more than enough flowing in? And that everyone has that right to have more than enough flowing in. And before I forget, I want to say welcome to our those of you online. We're always so glad to have you with us. So from the late Reverend Eric Butterworth in his book, Spiritual Economics, but the good thing is I was awake and aware enough to recognize I had this pit in my stomach. So I thought, I'm gonna kind of journey into this a little bit later. So when I journeyed into it a little bit later, I realized that, and I've shared before, that there were numerous years in my first marriage that it was very tight financially. And so when I would go to the grocery store, I would have a very limited amount of money to spend on groceries. So guess what was out of the question to buy? Organic. You know, organic, $1 or $2 more per thing makes a big difference. So in the moment that I realized, oh, that's an old belief that was generating, and it was telling me that it was still there because I felt it in my body. And so you know what I did? I told the belief to get out, that it was no longer welcome here. And you know what I love about doing that? It's the same thing to me when Jesus was in the wilderness and quote unquote Satan came to him and said, Satan, get behind me, error thinking, get behind me. Sometimes we have to command these things to get behind us, to get out of our consciousness because you're no longer relevant. So I like this because it is that reminder, friends, we have to stay awake and aware. If we are dealing with lack in our finances, we must do the work that is ours to do to change that. But that means I've got to wake up and I've got to become aware. And how do we know when we're off kilter? We feel it in our bodies, don't we? We always feel it in our bodies. That's a great indicator that, hey, this is something for me to look at, and I'm going to shift that consciousness. So some of the other unconscious beliefs that we have about money, that we believe that it's a sacrilege to talk about money in a spiritual context. Oh my goodness, there's so many things with that. I think especially for anybody who's a minister or in a Reiki practitioner, whatever, any kind of spiritual things, that it's like, oh, you shouldn't ask for money for your work, as though it's not as, that it's not as relevant, but it's a sacrilegious thing to do. And then in church, we've been taught that money is, not this church, money is the root of all evil. And Eric Butterworth says, how can money be evil when no one, not even God's people, can do without it? So there's this puzzling thing about it. And there's the thought that we believe that money and material possessions are what are going to make us happy. Now, we all agree that having a greater flow of finances in our life, it does ease things up, right? But it's not the source of our happiness. And the reality, my friends, is we live in a culture of more, 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 more. We are slammed on a regular basis with media that tells us, if you have this thing, you're going to be happier. Watch the commercial on this thing and see how happy people are because they have this thing. And the next biggest, best thing, accumulation. And you know what happens when we accumulate too much stuff? We get storage units. Do you know that storage units, the storage unit business is over a $40 billion a year business just in the United States alone? Now, social researcher Hugh McKay sees the high demand as a social indicator of our values. We are more materialistic than ever. He notes that consumerism is rife, supported by mass marketing that says, my possessions are the measure of my worth. 1 in 11 families in America has a storage unit that costs an average of $90 per month. Now, storage units have their place, but we all know that there are many who have storage units that they have probably paid way more for the storage unit than for the stuff that was in the storage unit itself. So it's this cycle of more, more, more. How do we get into that cycle? Well, our culture, again, it supports it. So we start out in life, we have a little money, we get an old car, we get a better job, we get a raise, we buy a nicer car, we partner with someone, we buy a house, and then, we both get a raise, and then we buy a boat, and then we buy a motorcycle, and then we get another raise, and then we decide, well, let's get a bigger house because this is going to really show people who we are. And then we start buying more and more and more and more stuff to put into our house or our houses and ultimately into our storage units. And here's the thing, is the cycle is that we begin to go into so much debt that our possessions now possess us. And it's no longer joyful. And in fact, what we see today is the big move towards minimizing, towards tiny houses, towards downsizing, towards releasing the stuff. But it's an interesting thing for us to look at. But the biggest thing to look at is when we get into this cycle of more, 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 and I got to have the next best thing and the next, is what is left out of that experience? Giving. We've totally left giving out of that. We have forgotten that we are one. And that when my prosperity increases, that I can help increase the prosperity of those around me or of organizations around me. But what happens instead is that, I'm going to buy a bigger house and have a bigger house payment now, and I'm not going to be able to give because I've got this. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a nice house. It's not that. But I know that we know where I'm focusing here is on the importance of giving. And Jim Rosemergy said, and that giving is basically an attitude with which you touch things. And I'm going to read something in a few minutes that really brings that out. Because it's not just about money. It's about how we touch everything in our lives. But since we're focused on money, that's what we're going to talk about mainly today. He says that giving does not depend on what we have, that studies have shown in our culture that the immensely wealthy are not necessarily the greatest givers, that they actually give a small portion of what they receive. It's actually the middle class income earners that actually give more. And I thought that was very interesting. So why don't we give? Well, greed is one answer, this idea that we have to have more. But underlying that, my friends, is fear. No matter what, it's fear. Fear that we're not going to have enough. Fear that, if I give this amount, how am I going to pay for this? Or am I going to have enough for retirement? Or I'm going to, what underlies everything is fear. So there's a story in the Bible about the widow's offering. And in this story, Jesus is watching as the people are coming to the temple and they're giving their offering. So he's watching and he sees the wealthy people come and they give a lot of money into the offering. And he sees a poor widow and she comes and she gives 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. But he says to his disciples, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth. She gave out of her poverty, put in everything, all that she had to live on. I am not suggesting today that you give all of your money away, but the idea, what underlies this story, is that she brought her whole being into that giving. She brought her whole faith, and she brought her whole trust, and she knew what her source was. And this is about us bringing our allness into whatever we are giving, whether it's our time, our talent, and our treasure. Have you ever been around anyone who, no matter what they're doing, they're just so into it? You know, in a week we're going to have an outdoor cleanup. And I notice when people come to do the cleanup, they're excited about being here. And when somebody is excited about giving of their time, and you cannot help but get expanded and uplifted and excited too, right? So it's important that we bring, again, all of ourselves into our giving. And our final breakthrough is that we give because it's our nature to give. When we are withholding in any way, again, I promise you, if we are withholding, it's out of fear. And if we're, in fear, we're not in faith. So I want to talk to you. Don't get freaked out here. I'm going to talk about tithing. Don't get up and leave. Don't, leave your at home. Because anybody who knows me, has been here for a long time, knows that I have a different idea about tithing. And I go in alignment with Reverend Jim Rosemurgy and with the late Reverend Eric Butterworth. So the word tithe literally means 1/10 of something. Now in the Old Testament, we had a theocracy, which is a government that was led by religious leaders. And so it was easy to say, okay, you're going to give 1/10 of your agriculture to the Lord's work. Now here's the thing about it. It was a tax. It was not that you were giving it. It was a tax. You had to pay with agriculture. If you tried to pay with money, you got fined for that. And if you did not pay your tithe, the penalty was death. So this was quite different than something where we're just giving. And in a very real sense, my friends, we still tithe to the government, probably more than 10%. And I'm happy to do that. For me, there's a lot of benefit that comes from that. So I'm happy that that's part of what, my income goes to. But we need to recognize that we have a choice with the rest of whatever comes in for us. So here's the thing about tithing. Tithing is not a spiritual law. And many times I feel almost like it's taught as though it's a spiritual law. If you tithe 10%, magically you are going to be wealthy and all of this stuff is going to happen. Well, the reality is, if you don't have the consciousness to support a 10% tithe, you are going to go the opposite way. And I've seen that so many times throughout my time in ministry. We've done the Prosperity Plus class. I've had people come to me at different times and say, I'm tithing 10%, but I am freaked out. And it's like, okay, well then let's back up here. So what we want to understand, tithing of itself is not a spiritual law, but it is based on a solid spiritual law, spiritual principle that the great master teacher and great metaphysician, Jesus, taught us. Jesus did not teach tithing, quote unquote. He admonished the people of the day for missing the spirit of the law in that, but he did teach a consciousness of giving. Eric Butterworth said that Jesus saw the keeping of the rigid code of tithing far less important than the weightier matters of consciousness. And that's really pretty much his whole teaching is about consciousness. In Jesus' teaching, we move from the coercive way of tithing to the place where we have a choice. We get to be in partnership with this wonderful opportunity to give. And tithing is a consciousness of God first in all things. Giving 10% of our time, talent, and treasure to the upliftment and the expansion of good in our world. I want you to hear this. Think about if every single one of us was giving 10% of our time, talent, and treasure to the upliftment and the expansion of good in our world. How different of a world would we be living in? How different of a world. Now that's a lofty place for us to get to, right? We're talking about 10% of your day, 10% of your talent, 10% of your treasure. So that's a lofty goal. And I love lofty goals. I think that's how Jesus always taught us in these lofty goals. This is what we can do. This is where we can get to. And when we get to this place, if we get to that place of tithing 10%, then we're living in a high spiritual consciousness. But it doesn't make anybody less than if you're not giving 10%. I want you to hear that, because I will not set guilt up in our consciousness. That is absolutely 100%. Well, I will not support that. It's doing what we can do. It's stretching, it's reaching, it's expanding, it's raising the bar higher for ourselves. So let's look at this. Jesus said, as you give, so you shall receive. In Luke, he says, give and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, and we like to add, oozing out, will come back to you. For with the same measure that you give, it will be measured back to you. In other words, what this is saying, the consciousness with which you give, it's the consciousness with which you give determines how it will come back to you. The scripture that says, for to him who has, more will be given, and to him who has not, even that will be taken away. That seems really unfair, doesn't it? But it's consciousness. That's all that's being talked about there. When we have the consciousness, and here's what I do want to say, not just the consciousness and the action. When we have the consciousness and the action, to him who has more is given, because that's the way the law works. That's the way that the universe works. Here's the thing. Tithing is an amazing spiritual tool. And I would encourage all of us to aim for that, because it's an amazing spiritual tool that will lead you to that high consciousness. So recently, and in fact it was at the beginning of starting this series, I was really guided to start giving more. A big part of it, I will say, had to do with looking at this year and going, okay, here we are, we're still in these restrictive times, we don't have as many people, how can I be a greater part of supporting our ministry? And I was guided to increase what I give by 10%. And I was also guided, because I got my stimulus check immediately, I was guided to give a portion of that back to this ministry. And the reason I give it to this ministry is because I value this ministry, because I think that this ministry is a part of the upliftment and the expansion of good in our community and in our world. Now, I will give beyond that to other organizations, but I will tell you, this is the main place where I give, and it's not just because I'm the spiritual leader, it's because this is my spiritual home. It has been my spiritual home for over 30 some years. And it is my joy to be able to give to this. Now, one of the things that I do want to say in the giving, what really makes a difference for our ministry, and I keep saying ours because it's not mine, it's not the boards, it's not the staff, it's our ministry, is when we give on a regular basis. And that's why I give through my bank account. I give through my bank account because, number one, there's no fee attached to it. Number two, I have total control of it. I can get on my computer at any time and change it, which I did. But number three, because I know that the ministry knows that even when I'm not here, my financial support is here. And that's important. We also have the Tithely app. The Tithe.ly. I encourage you to look into that and download that. It makes giving so easy. There is a fee on that. You can click the little button and you can take care of that fee if you want your whole donation to come to the ministry. And, recognize here that this is not just about giving to the church. Obviously, I'm going to talk about that because we are supported by donations, love offerings, and tithes. But really to be open to recognizing that it is in the giving. We want to give out to support whatever our heart calls us to give to, that is going to be part of the expansion and the upliftment of good in our world. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you about this, and I don't understand it. I don't understand it, but I always have more than enough. I always have more than enough. And I want to tell you, I've stretched myself to raise the bar, to say I'm going to stand even more so in that faith and in that knowing that God is my source and that my good can come from anywhere. My gosh, you guys, we got stimulus checks, the majority of us. What? Last year I got a check from health insurance that was totally out of the blue, that almost got thrown away because I didn't recognize it. There are all these different ways that our good will come to us as we really step out in that faith. So another aspect of prosperity other than giving is gratitude. And Amy did such a great job. This was a last minute thing for her this morning. Hey, do you want to do the meditation? With getting us into that feeling place of gratitude. Here's the thing that I want us to recognize. God, the God that we understand, doesn't care if you're grateful or not. There's not a God that is going to give you more because you're grateful, or that is going to withhold because you're not grateful. Gratitude expands us. Gratitude opens us up. Gratitude, when you start looking around and you start recognizing all the blessings in your life, how do you feel? Yeah, you feel really good. Do you feel like this? No, you feel like this, right? So it opens out the way. It's priming the pump of our prosperity, the power that gratitude has. Eric Butterworth says, a grateful heart does not need something to be grateful for. It simply flows forth from within, and we find that gratitude is a causative energy. And being in that state of gratitude keeps us in that divine flow. I know Paul and I were talking about this the other day. We both said, the moment that we wake up, it's an immediate just like, oh, thank you. I mean, it's like the words are just immediately coming out, not verbally, but thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's not even for a specific thing. It's just like, thank you. Wow, this is amazing, But then you can get into specifics. I woke up today. I have another day. I'm sleeping in a warm bed, or I'm sleeping in an air-conditioned place. Or I get to look out and I get to see the deer, or the turkey, or the flowers. There's so much for us to be grateful for. So a little bit of what Eric talks about in his book is that the Apostle Paul said to give thanks in all things. He did not say to give thanks for all things. And so the difference in that is that it would be hard if we were in the midst of a lack experience, we didn't know if, going to have enough money to pay our rent or our mortgage, to say, I'm so grateful for this experience that I don't have the money and I don't know where it's going to come from and I'm worrying. Okay. The difference is that we can say, even though right now I don't see how I'm going to pay my rent or mortgage, I know that I live and move and have my being in the very substance of God and the most opulent source that there is. And at this moment, I know that divine mind is working out the way for all of my needs to be met. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we can give thanks in the midst of it in gratitude. And this takes us out of worry. It takes us out of that closed energy and into the expansive energy. And again, I don't understand how it works. None of us can explain how it works. But things just show up. Things just open up, or an idea will come. Maybe there's somebody you think, oh, I wonder if this person might help me out. I mean, there's all kinds of things that will show up. Our job then is to take the action on whatever comes up for us. So we want to make sure to be in that state of gratitude. When Jesus fed the 5,000, he looked up. He looked beyond the lack. We have to look up above, and he gave thanks that it was already being done. And there's a lot of different ways to interpret that story, but that's all we need to look at right now. And one of the things that he did is he blessed the food. Now, to bless is to confer prosperity on it, to confer abundance, to confer more upon it. So bless your wallet, bless your bank account, bless your retirement account, bless your home, bless your car, bless your body. Take the time to really move into that place of blessing this. And Eric Butterworth said, as you feel grateful, I love this. You become attractive not only in your beauty and radiance, but in your relationships with other people. More important, you release a vital energy that draws to you opportunities, employment, and a secure flow of substance. Everything begins to work in your life in an orderly and creative way. And I want to tell you, it doesn't matter if you're on a fixed income or not. We've got to get, in fact, out of that consciousness, I'm on a fixed income, and that's all that can come in. That's limited thinking. It's opening ourselves up to be in the creative flow. How do we do that? We stir up that gift of gratitude. Think about the meditation that Amy did. And you stir up that gratitude inside of your being and just let yourself be saturated with that and be in it, just grateful for the opulence that is everywhere in your life, knowing that source is flowing all the time in your life. So Charles Fillmore says, God is the source, I'll read this because it's hard to see that, of a mighty stream of substance, and you are a tributary of that stream, a channel of expression. Blessing the substance increases its flow. If your money supply is low or your purse seems empty, take it in your hands and bless it. See it filled with living substance, ready to become manifest. As you prepare your meals, bless the food with the thought of spiritual substance. When you dress, bless your garments and realize you are being constantly clothed with God's substance. The more conscious you become of the presence of the living substance, the more it will manifest itself for you, and the richer will be the common good of all. Identify yourself with substance, and you will soon begin to rejoice in the ever-present bounty of God. One of the things that I absolutely love is our gift blessing that we do every week. And you'll notice that when I do it, I'm very animated in it because it's divine love, the highest and only power that there is, divine love through me, blesses and it multiplies all that I have. For me, it's I have so much, all that I give, but my friends, be open to that receiving and all that I receive. What a powerful blessing that we do every single week with the gifts that we have to give. So you were given today, now at home you didn't have this, but today you were given a $1 bill, and I'm going to invite you to take that $1 bill out, and I'm going to invite you to look at the black side of it. And you'll notice that the defining thing on the black side of this is the identifying number of 1. It's $1, and it's not a penny more than $1, correct? Did everybody get a dollar in here? Okay. So if you turn that dollar over and look right into the center of it, let's read that together, shall we? In God we trust. Imagine if every time that you had any monetary involvement, any monetary interaction, even if it's not with cash, because I know we're a lot using our debit cards or whatever, but if that was our consciousness, in God we trust. What do we trust in? Do we trust in just our job? Do we trust in the economy? Do we trust in the government? Or do we trust in God? And this is exactly where both Eric Butterworth and Charles Fillmore and where Jim Rosemurgy take us over and over again, bring us right back to, is I live and move and have my being in this divine substance, in this most opulent universe that wants to give to me and through me. It's always working on our behalf. We just have to be open to it. So Eric Butterworth says, keep your identity with money as a symbol of limitless God substance. In his book, and I just want to share this with you quickly, he says to, give to prove the law in action. And he said, this involves going the second mile in meeting obligations, turning the other cheek in relationships, and forgiving until 70 times 7. It means diligence in keeping the high watch of positive thinking, and loving reactions in overcoming the world of tribulations. He said, get the feeling of being a channel for the flow of good. Think, give and you will receive. Think of your work as giving. Think of every relationship as an opportunity to give. Give to your children, give to your neighbors, give to passersby on the street. Think, give way, and let. So the Thanksgiving living, that's what it is. It's being in that place of absolute gratitude for the life that we have been given, for all the opulence that is all around us, and giving way to the flow of that. Now, I do want to remind you that, let's say this together. I am so grateful that I can give way to this energy because I know there is an infinite flow of well-being pouring forth constantly. Now, one thing I want to say here is that don't quit. The challenge is that we start this giving, we increase our giving, and then we let ourselves get freaked out because things aren't changing immediately. Stay with it. Do the work that is yours to do. All I can tell you is that my life is in a very different place today than it was before, and it's due to doing the work. And I continue to do the work because, as I said, clearly I still have some old stuff coming up there. But keep doing the work, and it will change for you. I want to remind you that on the Unity of Springfield Connection Group on Facebook, that every day we're doing the 40 Days Guide to Prosperous Living by Jim Roseberg. I'm sharing that every day to give all of us the opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper. So, in closing, just remember that this week to go out and just be in great gratitude. Open yourself up to the ways that you can give in all ways, bringing your entire full being into it. And I say to you, namaste, namaste. And you're welcome to keep the dollar or you can donate the dollar. Okay, so I'm going to invite Karen Craigo to come up. Karen is our newest board member, one of our newest board members, and she's going to share some thoughts with you.
Hi. Let's see here. Don't have a printer. I wrote a thing about the stimulus. I was expecting it. I wrote this on Tuesday and got it on Wednesday for my family of 4. And, that was a nice windfall. And I sent it to Sue to see if she had a use for it, and she asked me to read it to you today. So it's a letter, but I titled it because it's me and I do that. Stimulated to give. The universe really does provide, doesn't it? And for me this week, it's providing over and above its usual abundance with the help of the federal government, thanks to the stimulus payment that's scheduled to hit my bank tomorrow. I'll be frank, my plans are to pay my bills, maybe a few creditors are tapping their feet and looking my way, and to treat myself to a few small purchases, like a new swimsuit I've been eyeballing. I bought it this morning. Yay! But I also feel drawn to give some of the money to causes I care about, and Unity of Springfield is the nearest and dearest to my heart. I've been a member of Unity's board of directors for several weeks now, and that position has offered me a chance to see more deeply into the life of our church. The board considers the direction of the church with deliberations about safety during our current pandemic, and we also pay close attention to balance sheets. COVID-19 has had an impact on Unity of Springfield, as we operate at just a fraction of the in-person attendance that we were able to accommodate before the pandemic. We've all developed different habits of attending and giving, and this shift means that our income is not as robust as we have experienced in the past, nor is it at the level that we need it to be. So I've made a decision for myself. I'm going to donate a portion of my stimulus payment to Unity of Springfield to help tide us over during this period of need. What I haven't decided is how much to give. Shall I make a flat payment of $100, $200, $250, more? Shall I try for a literal tithe, giving 10% of the stimulus payment to the church? I'm still debating what I can afford, though I know for sure I will make a special offering. I hope you will consider doing the same. We live in an abundant universe, and I see proof of that every single day. It is a pleasure to share the bounty with the place I consider my spiritual home. Through me, it blesses and multiplies, and whatever I opt to give, I'm sure to receive. I'm going to take 10 more seconds. I downloaded the Tithing app a long time ago. Unity of Springfield pops right up. Throw in my PIN. I put in the amount. I like to cover the fees. And done. I just did what I said what I was going to do. So I hope you'll consider giving too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thanks for showing us how easy that is with Tithely. That's awesome. So let's take our gifts in our hands and let's bless them with our awesome blessing together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And thank you, God.